Have you ever felt like the family court system wasn't built to protect you, but to trap you? You're not imagining it. This week's guest is a warrior who spent nearly a decade battling legal abuse and changed the law to protect others. If you're stuck in a toxic court battle or just desperate for hope, you need this episode. Stay tuned because you're about to learn how to outsmart the system, reclaim your peace, and take back your life. Do you feel like you are stuck in the legal system with an ex who's trying to wear you down and bleed you dry financially? Well, if you do, then you are in the right spot. I'm Tiffany with True Crime Connections, and today I have Lisa Johnson with me, who helps people stay sane under insane circumstances. Oh, how do I love that? Hi, Lisa.
Hi. So good to be here, Tiffany.
Oh my God, so glad to have you. And I can already tell this is going to be an amazing episode. So I just want people to know, if you know anyone who's going to need this episode, please share it. Because I already know a couple people who need it. So
Yep.
you have got a lot going on and I love it. Jesus, you got a weekly legal abuse support group. You helped pass Jennifer's Law in Connecticut.
Yep.
You got a book coming. You got an online program. Kudos to you. Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and guess that you've been in a situation where you needed all of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know what situation I was in until I was out. And then I started learning what situation I had been in. And then I was in another situation, which was being in the midst of something called legal abuse, which I had never even heard of. And I was just like, this is insane.
Right.
How has happened? Like, how am I spending 10 years in the legal system?
That's a long time.
And the divorce was only 1 year, and $100,000.
Whoa. What was the other 9 for?
The other 9 were him not complying with our agreement and me being forced to go back to enforce it.
See, that's the thing that kills me. Like, how does the court system not recognize that and put an end to it? Like, you're wasting everyone's time.
Time, money, energy, everything.
Right.
Like, you would think that they would want to finish it fast, but when somebody on the other side has all kinds of money, they can create all kinds of confusion to wear the other person down, to give up. And, our case took place in 2 different states. There were different lawyers on his end involved. It was mostly me. I hired a couple of lawyers at some point to help me do a few things. And I ended up realizing that it was just better to do it myself. So for basically 7 years and about 100 court appearances, I was representing myself in 2 states. And then my ex didn't like any of the decisions that were made against him. He appealed 4 times, and then I represented myself on the appellate level and won. And then the case was so notable that it got published in the Connecticut Law Journal. So it's case law. I always say I'm so proud of that because that's hard for any attorney to get published. And every attorney I speak to says, I've never heard of a pro se or self-represented litigant. So that's like one of my big life achievements that I never planned.
Right. No, that is amazing. When I was reading up on that, I was very impressed. Like, you go, girl. You did it by yourself. I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had like wind beneath my wings. I had, my partner and my dad and friends and things like that. But yeah, I wouldn't have been able to otherwise because it was a long, arduous, I say it's got my best education in the trenches.
And I mean, it's got to be somewhat difficult because each state has their own laws. And now you're doing it in 2 separate states. So you had to learn how each state does it.
Well, actually, so my background is in education, and I was a high school English teacher, and I taught writing, and I am a professional writer. And so I felt like it was less about the law and more about the art of persuasive communication. So the skills that I had from teaching, I was able to use in the courtroom in terms of presenting properly, getting documentation together. Of course, it wasn't easy, and I learned a lot along the way, especially by writing these beautiful speeches and starting, and the judge would be like, okay, just get to the point. I'd be like 7 pages. Like, I spent a week on this. But yeah, and just staying like super, super focused and learning what counted in the court. So case law certainly was helpful, but I don't feel like that was the biggest part. It was really about being persuasive. How do you effectively convince professionals, that you're in the right and the other person's in the wrong? And over years and years that the case took place, it was really a lot of remembering the details. And that's one of the things I love about being pro se, which is not something for the faint of heart at all. But the only case I had was my life. I wasn't a lawyer who was balancing a bunch of other cases. And so going up against attorneys who my ex hired, they had other cases. They didn't know the details like I did. So, when you're speaking to a judge in particular and you have to think of something, you have to remember things like I knew it. I had everything here and on paper. My ex wasn't the best person, best witness in court. And I think he relied heavily on his attorneys because he had so much money. I didn't have the money, but I had to rely on myself. And so you just make do.
Yeah, and apparently you did. I mean, and also you lived it. So, you can like pinpoint and go back and really think about all the things that had happened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was like focusing on different parts at different times because it was so involved.
It's 10 years, I'd say so.
You're right. Yeah. Everybody's getting tired.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like the judge would be like, listen, if I see you two one more time.
Well, there were multiple judges. So judges usually cycle every 2 to 3 years. So we had multiple judges. We had different judges in New York. I think in New York, we had like 3 or 4 different judges. In Connecticut, we had another 3 or 4. So yeah, it went on, and a lot of staying sane and staying afloat and doing well was being able to compile that documentation. So every time I would go to court, or not every time, but a lot of the times where I a significant, like a hearing or something, I would get the transcript. And so the transcript is a record of all of the conversations that the lawyers, everything that the lawyers said, everything that the witnesses said, and what the judge said without any emotion. So in the moment when you're in court, it's like you don't remember everything. And then to get the transcript to look back and be like, oh, there's gold here. And so when I'd go back, I'd basically re-quote what other judges had said and like put together a record, because it was always like a new person or reminding them again, like, here's the history, here's the patterns of behavior, here's what I'm asking for again. Like, yes, we had the same conversation 4 years ago. No, I'm not going to agree to that because it didn't get us anywhere.
Right. That is a good little gold nugget, though, for anybody who is going to be doing something like that. I never even thought of that, because exactly, like, you have 100 things going through your brain while you're standing, and especially when you're in front of the judge. Like, I don't know about you, or that I'm like in front of a judge a lot. Good. Your mind goes blank because you have an authoritative person, and they can be intimidating.
Oh, yeah. It's terrifying. And for so many of our clients, they're like, well, I feel bad because I've never done this before. I don't know anything about it. I'm like, who would? Like, nobody's done this before. Nobody would know it.
Right.
So don't, you have to realize, like, it's okay not to know anything. Nobody expects you to know anything.
Right.
You learn along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And through trial and error, I'm sure.
Exactly.
So why don't you explain to our community about the law you got passed?
Okay. So, and certainly I don't take all the credit. There was 108 of us giving live testimony. I think I was like speaker number 8 or something. But let's see, maybe it was like 2020, we had a senator. So my state, I'm a New Yorker. That's why I talk really fast, but I live right over the border in Connecticut. And there was a senator named Alex Kasser. And I was in some kind of support group at the YWCA. And that's also where I got my domestic violence certification. And somehow Alex was like looking for people with stories about, significant things that had happened with their divorces and post judgment, meaning what happened afterward. And so I, had been in court for years then, and she met me for coffee, and I don't remember what she asked me, but I told her a little bit about the case, and she said she was working on something called Jennifer's Bill. So there were two, there's, so many domestic violence victims that are killed every year, men and women and children, but especially women. So in Connecticut, we had a situation a few years ago with a woman named Jennifer Dulos from New Canaan, and her husband had basically murdered her. His girlfriend was involved. His business partner was involved. They had several children, and they had been involved in like a long-term custody battle. And so things had escalated, and then she disappeared, but it was very suspicious. And so there was this big case, and she still hasn't been found. During the case, which went on for years, her ex-husband killed himself. And then his girlfriend was on trial, and she just got convicted. And that was like a whole other thing. So Jennifer's Law is actually named after Jennifer Dulos, but then there was another Jennifer years before that who was murdered right in front of her 3 children by her ex-husband during another custody battle. She and her children had fled to California because it was the only shelter that would take teenage boys, because she wanted her son to be with her too. And a lot of the shelters only take women. And so she went all the way there, and her ex-husband filed something, and they had to come all the way back. And then he shot and killed her in front of their children. And so she was the other Jennifer that the bill was named after. So Alex was trying to get this passed in Connecticut, where we would expand what's called our legal definition of domestic violence to include something called coercive control. And so before that, in a lot of the states, when you're trying to get a restraining order, you have to prove physical violence or imminent threat of physical harm. And so Jennifer's Law, when it passed, so it was Jennifer's Bill, then it was Jennifer's Law. So when it passed, Connecticut became the 3rd state to have these coercive control laws, where now we don't just look at physical violence, we look at financial abuse, legal abuse, revenge porn, sexual abuse, stalking, isolation, digital abuse, psychological, verbal, like all the different things. So you look at the big picture when deciding like whether someone needs a protective order, how custody is decided. So it really expanded things. And I was fortunate enough, this is crazy, but at the end of right before the 10 years, like finally, my ex finally complied, that I had the same judge as Jennifer Dulos had. I had the judge that had made these decisions that, a lot of people were very angry with her because they blamed her for what had happened to Jennifer. And it was so scary because I had been involved with Jennifer's Law. It was published in the papers. There was international, testimony, and then like streamed everywhere. And there I was like arguing Jennifer's Law to the judge that like created the situation kind of. But she ended up giving me the best orders ever. It was astonishing. So it was really like,
that?
I know. And another thing that was really insane, I was called for jury duty to be part of the case against her husband's ex-girlfriend. And you had to go in and say like why you had to be excluded. and so I had to see like his ex-girl, Jennifer Dulos's ex's girlfriend, and like the lawyers, and say in front of them like why I could not be part of the jury. And who said I was involved with Jennifer's Law. I'm a high conflict divorce strategist. Like we train people on coercive control. And they're like, yeah, you're excused. Like, get out. I was like, yeah, I had Judge Heller too. So yeah, it was crazy. It was such a crazy coincidence.
Oh my gosh. Seriously. Yeah. Like you couldn't make that shit up.
I know. Really, it was amazing. Yeah, that's actually the topic of the book that we're working on now, which has to do with how to handle when your ex turns the kids against you, which we see all the time in our community because Chris and I only deal with the extremely high conflict. Yeah, so we're working on a book. I'm finishing up the first draft. that's due to the publisher later this month, but it's about how to handle when your ex is turning the kids against you in court and in life, because these kids are weaponized all the time. And one of the most common things in our community, which is only high conflict, extreme cases, are not even just after the relationship ends, but pre the relationship ending. An abuser, an abusive ex, well, an abusive person is turning the kids, they're grooming them to reject or discard the other parent, because we always say that when they leave or when the relationship ends, that kind of person says, I want to leave you homeless, penniless, and childless. So I'm going to take everything and you're going to have nothing, and I'm going to punish you. And so they just want to scorch the ends of the earth, including your children, to make a point that they're the victim.
Right. Parental alienation is, I believe, what they call it. And it's just, I had a lady on the show and that happened to her. And her kids are still kind of wishy-washy with her. And like, this is many years after the fact. So it works. And it's a horrible thing. Like, you have to be, I'm sorry, a horrible person. If just because someone doesn't want to be with you anymore, to be like, well, I want you to have nothing to live for then. Like, what kind of person are you? Like, who does that?
This affects 22 million people.
Wow.
Yeah.
A year?
Just in general, like who have to deal with this issue. And there's a lot of shame associated with it, because people, when you have a child that dies, everybody rallies around and thinks, let me help you do it. Like, everyone feels bad for you. But when you have a child that won't talk to you, there's something called there's ambiguous loss, where you're grieving, but the person is still alive. And you can't talk to people because they think, well, you must have done something wrong for your kids not to talk to you, because they don't understand the dynamics of domestic violence and psychological abuse towards kids. And it's basically like a brainwashing that happens, steadily. And then it's like a discard, because the child isn't allowed to love both parents. So someone with that kind of personality, usually some kind of personality disorder, they're like, it's all or nothing. So if you love me, then you have to discard or hate your other parent. And if the child shows affection towards the other parent, they get punished. If they show hostility towards the other parent, and that's all like our clients, the target parent it's called, then they get rewarded. So there's so much involved, and it's so sad. Bless you. Yeah. But that is something that we see happening all the time to men and women. And it's so common that when we first meet a client and we discuss like the things we can help them with, one of them is we say, we're going to make sure through your communication that we're going to protect you from false claims of parental alienation, because that's what the other side always says when they don't get their way, but they're the ones doing it. And then we say, we also help you understand what that means, so you can start aggressively building a case when they start violating the parenting plan and telling your kids don't want to see you and blocking you from, going to your kids' events and stuff like that. I mean, it's such an involved thing, but kids are weaponized all the time, and there's so much damage done.
And it's not fair, because this is something now that they have to live with for the rest of their life. And when they get older, they might realize it, and then they're going to blame themselves for even taking part of it, even though they kind of didn't have a choice. They were literally brainwashed.
Right. I have a very good friend whose daughters were turned against her for 8 years, and they just came back this past year. They're now like 20 and I think 22.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, I interviewed each of them separately, and some of their stories are in the book, because people are like, how do kids ever come back? And she had no legal resource because her kids had already aged out of the system, but they get into the details of like what it was like even before the actual split, for 8 years of like their father grooming them to believe that their mother didn't love them, that she was a terrible person. And then it took like one thing, and then he used it, and that's a whole long story. But yeah, there's a lot of things that people can do outside of the legal system to try to fix it. But it is It's awful. It's like your children are in a cult.
Right.
And then you think, well, you were part of that as well, but you got out. But now your kids are forced because they're dependent. So they have to go back and forth usually. Yeah. But a lot of our clients are dealing with this.
Well, I'm glad your friend got her kids back, because that's heartbreaking. I couldn't imagine. Could not imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. These are parents who like love their kids, raise their kids, were the primary caregiver, were close to their kids, and they could see like it's starting to happen. And then they just nobody ever imagined that this could be true and real, and that they're like, I'm the loving parent. Like, how could my kid not talk to me anymore?
Right. So
A lot of his fear.
Do you guys help your clients with?
Okay. So we do several things. So Chris and I call ourselves high conflict divorce strategists. So we're not attorneys. We kind of fill the gap between what attorneys are not trained to do and therapists don't understand. So lawyers, as well as most of the world, we're logical. Like we think, okay, so people are breaking up, everybody's angry, but you're going to come to the table and you're going to think about being fair and doing what's best for your kids, right? Because that's what normal people do. So ours, we only deal with the crazy cases. So of course, our clients' exes don't care about either of those things. They care about me. What's best for me? And so everything, communication, negotiation has to be done completely differently, because you're dealing with someone who doesn't care about normal values that like a lot of these people are incapable of actually loving their children because they don't have empathy. So everything has to be done differently. Therapists, unfortunately, don't understand the trauma of legal abuse. And that's our specialty of like basically being stuck in the legal system for years with someone who's using it to control, harass, intimidate, coerce, or impoverish you. And so they'll sometimes give bad advice like, oh, just gray rock, like just don't answer your ex or something. But that could end up in like a terrible situation where people lose custody. They'll be like, oh, my therapist said just to like, I need to work on my own healing, but you can't behave like that when you share children with somebody. So we are not lawyers. We do a ton of strategic advice. We have lots of lawyers as clients because lawyers are generally not trained in strategy. And then we also have a lot of mental health professionals because people are just like, I don't understand the way the family court system works. All my years in court, my training and education, our experience in general, and interviewing hundreds of professionals about this topic. So we do a lot with strategy. We teach people how to present properly to evaluators or in court. We teach how to organize your documentation. So if you do have a lawyer, you're saving tons of money because you're being efficient. You know the stuff the court cares about versus like, here's my binders of everything and this really matters and why. It'd be like, no, like we do harsh New York reality checks and we'll be like, nope, yep, that's good, that's bad, here's why. And so our clients tend to be like really, really prepared and organized. So their lawyers love them. And so their lawyers, they make it easier because these are the really crazy cases. We also teach them something that we just released our first course on more than anything else is strategic communication. And the course is called How to Communicate with Your Ex Without Destroying Your Case or Losing Your Mind. Because that's what everybody's freaking out about. Like they still have post-traumatic stress disorder from communicating because they have to still be in contact with this person for 18 years plus. And then we work a lot with clients who don't have attorneys anymore, like me, going pro se, helping them build like really persuasive arguments. We do stuff with mediation. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and now we're doing a lot with helping people in the whole like parental alienation, abuse by proxy thing. So
do you think it would be better, like say to go through like a course or like one of your classes and learn how to do it yourself, or to use like a pro bono kind of firm? Like, have you?
All right. So great question. Cause like we're way cheaper, but I do not think anybody should ever deal with a custody battle initially or a divorce without an attorney, because that's the basis of the case. And that is like everything. Like people, you have to know your rights. You need to know a lot of stuff about the law. Like that should be done with a professional. And then after that, post-judgment, it's like you basically have the law. You have your agreement or your court order. When someone violates it, it's more limited So then you have a better chance of doing it yourself. But being pro se, it's also called pro per or self-represented. It takes a lot. And one of the most important things is learning emotional detachment. And so we have a good friend named David Morneau. He's an attorney in Canada. He's called himself the recovering litigator. And he wrote the foreword to our first book. This is our first book that came out in 2023. But he talks about how when he used to litigate, he loved going against self-represented litigants because he's like, as soon as I get under their skin, they get so emotional and they completely lose every single time. So it takes a lot. Like, you have to have such a thick skin. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be super, super organized. There's a lot of training that goes into it. So with our clients who are pro se, I'll bully them. I'll be like, well, why do you need this? And what about this? So you did this wrong. Opposing counsel is bullying them. And so there's a lot of pivoting that has to take place and tons of preparation. So it's something you can learn, but only after, I would say, a lawyer has made like a solid court or helped you get a solid court order or agreement in place.
Right. So, because I know there are firms that will take on your case for no cost, but you wonder how much time are they really going to put towards your case?
Okay, so what you said, like pro bono or like limited scope. So then that's something we can help with, because that we always say you need like a team of people. You need like a lawyer, a therapist, us, friends and family if you have them, maybe a financial person, maybe a real estate person. But like, you need a team to get involved with it. So if you have a lawyer, like, that's great, because we can do a lot with like helping you be the teacher's pet of clients for that attorney by getting like all the stuff together. And then they basically can just do their job of translating your case into the law. And you know how to behave yourself. You don't make faces in court. You don't interrupt, which of course I used to do.
I think
you have to learn.
I could not hide my face.
Oh, me neither. Me neither. And especially in COVID, like when you're on camera, it's like I'd forget. And the judges would be like, Miss Johnson, stop rolling your eyes, stop shaking your head. And I'd be like,
I totally get it.
So hard.
My face don't lie.
I know. It's so hard. I learned, I was like, now I'm just going to look down, or I'm going to look to the side.
Right. No, I get it. I'd probably just have to stare at the floor, find a spot and just and stare at it.
Yeah.
You also have an online program, From Fear to Fierce in Family Court.
Yes. So that we're just starting now. So that was that first course about like how to communicate with your ex properly. So that's the first one in the series. And then we just like literally this past week's sort of told our clients about it. And so, yeah, that's something people can see. Chris and I think it's like 4 hours. So we dive deeply into strategic communication, like the mistakes that people make, how your ex is going to communicate. We teach something called FRAC that we made up. That's like our whole method of doing it. And then because we've worked with hundreds of people with this and other things, people love client stories and samples. So we take of course, we've anonymized them. Actual like client letters over things that come up all the time, like when your ex doesn't answer and you need them to answer, like, what do you do? How do you get your ex to agree to a therapist? What do you do when your child is really sick and your ex is demanding parenting time? And so you basically take like original letters and then give them a makeover and go through explaining why. And we always say with strategic communication, you are always writing to your ex, but you're writing for that invisible audience. So judge, mediator, custody evaluator, attorney for the child, guardian ad litem, whoever. So we want you to always present as the best co-parent ever. But at the same time, you're documenting your ex's patterns of behavior over time, the impact it has on your children and on your relationship with your children. And this helps turn hearsay into evidence, because if you just went in and said, they did this, like nobody knows if that's true. But when you start strategically communicating in writing only, it becomes part of the record. And one of the best exhibits you can ever bring to court is your communication with your ex. So it helps, again, like turn hearsay to evidence. It turns the power dynamic around. And like I said earlier, protects you from false claims of parental alienation, because you're going to be such an amazing co-parent that no one could ever put their talons into, like saying you're acting like the authority and you're keeping the kids away. And a lot of what we do in teaching people how to behave themselves is going over best interest factors and going over something called the alienation factors, because we think that a lot of people are terrified when they hear, they're like, oh no, I'm being accused of it. And my ex has an expert. And oh no. And we're like, well, but when you understand what it all means, like we can make sure that you're not doing it and you can aggressively defend yourself. And we had a client recently, very, extreme case. Her ex is very rich and very powerful. And of course, was able to, and he's very charming as well. So managed to convince a couple of therapists that, maybe there was something going on with the mom. And the reason the kids didn't want to be with him is because it's the mom's fault. The mom is our client. And when they started bringing up the idea, like, maybe you're doing this, she's like, oh, no. It's because she already knew all the factors. And she was able to question, well, like, how can you prove that? Because there was already something, there's documented issues from before we even broke up. Like, yeah, I have this. And she was able to use those factors and they dropped it immediately. Like they didn't even try to pursue it. So we were so pleased and relieved and happy for her.
Absolutely. So like I was telling you when we first started, I had an interview right before this one. And I told her, I love telling people to journal, keep books of things that happen. And she said that it can work, but it also might not work. But what she advised, which I thought was really smart, is to like tape yourself. But like 5 minutes before you're getting ready to even tell the kids, like put your shoes on, like we're going to go for the meetup, stuff like that. So you can just hear normal interaction. If you're unloading the dishwasher, just to show like, yes, you are around, you're not telling your kids anything, and then get their natural expressions. Because sometimes the kids don't want to go. And so it'll be genuine, and then just have it roll the whole car ride. Have it for this swap, and then maybe like 5 minutes after, she's like, I don't care if you're in the drive-thru ordering McDonald's. It shows, yes, you made the drive, like, so nothing can come back later. And I was like, that's brilliant. I thought that was great advice.
Yeah, that is not advice we would give at all. Nothing against her, but absolutely not. No. First of all, from interviewing like a lot of attorneys, judges do not like recordings. AI, everything can be manipulated. Judges don't really care about like your conversations before drop off. They care about like the visible impact on children. And if children are like saying, I don't want to go with the other parent, which happens all the time, even in normal divorce, they're going to look a lot deeper than just like the recorded conversations that you bring in that are basically your own, like, who knows what how someone put that together. So they're going to be, when there's a custody evaluation by an evaluator or by a guardian ad litem or a forensic investigator, you can give them that, but I don't think it would have much weight. They would be interviewing your children. They'd be interviewing your collaterals, which are your witnesses. They'd want to know what you're like as a parent, not your own evidence of, what you say, but other people's impressions of you. They'd be interviewing your ex, you yourself, about like they use certain questions to sort of trigger you to see how you are. But there's a lot more involved. And yeah, in our experience is audio and video recordings, especially now with AI, like I would not, again, nothing against the other person, but like would never recommend that as some kind of powerful evidence.
Right. To me, it kind of made sense because it's like the other person's going to be like, see, she told them on the way here, da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? But you hear everything that's going on. She's like, clearly.
Yeah, but you don't know what's true. Like AI right now, there's no way to know that. So if it became an issue, a forensic investigator would like take it and then they'd be like, okay, but anyway, let me actually talk to the kids myself. Well, because in a way too, that's hearsay. Like we don't know who those kids are. Like we don't know when that happened. Like everything can be people bring all kinds of altered, doctored evidence to court. And that's why judges are like, we don't know the context. Like we don't have time for this.
AI's ruined so much.
I know, it's terrifying. I mean, it's good, but it's terrifying. Like you don't know it's real anymore. And it's really affected the legal industry.
I can totally see that because, look at what case was it? It was, I think, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. She falsified some of the text messages, which came back later on. So, like,
and there goes your credibility. Like,
right.
It's not even just the evidence. It's like now nobody believes anything you say.
Right. And people are now wondering if that's what's going to happen with the freaking Blake and Justin. I'm like,
oh yeah,
hearing about all that, but you never know. And that sucks because one person is telling the truth.
Right. But it takes like investigation, but also your testimony is, that counts towards your credibility. So people have to decide like whether to believe you or not. And one of the things we work on with people is presentation. We say, we want you to be as calm as you can. But for me to say calm down is inflammatory. Like that's not helpful at all. But the way we help you calm down is by helping you be really focused and organized on the things that the court cares about. Because you're usually up against a manipulative con artist, pathological liar. That's what most of our clients' exes are on some level, who is very charming and loves the whole new stage of the family court system because they're like, ooh, what new level of expert can I manipulate? And here we have our clients and us like traumatized, terrified, like worried about protecting our kids, like an absolute mess. And so it's like we have to like package you better because we want people to like you so that they believe you. And it takes a lot of work, but it can be learned.
Like journaling and keeping, does that hold up? Anything that you've seen? Because I say that a lot. Like,
journaling is really, that's really good to remember things. That's really good to put together a timeline, to be able to remember details and things. Absolutely. Like for me, I kept journals since I was 12. I didn't need all of those for my court case, but I had all kinds of details, but that helped my credibility. But again, like for you to come in and just report stuff, it's not just because, I have it in this journal. It's like, are you believable though? So It's helpful. It's definitely helpful in terms, like you should definitely be journaling. But for me, we want to memorialize what's happening with your ex in real time by like something happens and you say, hey, yesterday our kid came home and said this, like, I'm kind of confused, blah, blah, blah. And then we get into the whole strategic communication, then becomes part of a chain. If you just have it in a journal, it's fine, but it's more powerful. If it has something to do with your kids and your ex's parenting, you want to get it into a chain of communication, not just your own like reporting, because that's just one-sided.
No, for sure. It's hearsay.
Yeah.
I know here, I don't know if they have that where you are, but like when people are in a parenting kind of war, they can communicate through a text message that's set up by the court. So they know.
An app.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah. All over the world. Well, maybe not the world, but definitely America and Canada. Because we have clients in other parts of the world, and I'm trying to think, they might have the parenting apps in different parts of the world. But yeah, Our Family Wizard, Talking Parents, App Close, those are things that are the best way to communicate because nobody can alter anything. And you can do recordings. They can record calls with the kids because that's always like an issue about like someone saying they're not getting their calls. And it shows when something is read, so it shows when something is written. Things can be really organized. So those are really great.
I've never had to use any of that, thank God, but I would imagine like you can't delete or do anything.
Right.
So
no, and like judges or guardian ad litem's or whoever, they can get in there if they need to look at your communication and plan that they will. And that's why we're like, you're always under that court's microscope. So you can't pop off. You got to keep yourself presenting like the best co-parent ever.
Even though you want to scream.
Yep. So we do a thing with our clients too, where we say like, we call it the permission slip plan. So we say, once we teach you strategic communication, we do this thing called free check-ins as part of a membership program. We say, every time you think you want to send something to your ex, you send it to us first and you wait. You're going to wait a little bit and we're going to proofread and edit it for you because we want you to have clean hands and we want this record to be perfect. And this way you don't have the burden of doing right. And we also say, like, you can send us stuff that you want to send to your ex, but we have a whole little book over here of like things that are never going to be read by your ex because they would love to get it because they love to see you getting angry. But we take them and, oh my God, some of the stuff is absolutely hysterical. Like our clients are so funny. They're so funny. So in our course, we have some samples of some of the quotes that we've gotten, like that we say like letter to the ex, but like we intercepted it.
I was going to say, you could probably have like a book on that. And I bet people would read it because it'd be funny.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have them maybe that'll be one of the books down the road.
There you go.
Oh my God. The story, like being a writer myself, the stories we hear, it is just amazing. It's amazing. They're so much fun. I mean, they're fun. They're fun to tell later, but we have a lot of humor going on in our support group too, because it's so outrageous. And once you're past it a little, you just laugh because you're like, I can't believe that. Like for example, one of our clients, she was telling us her ex actually came into court and said that he was late because the squirrel ate the wires to his alarm clock. Like, really? That's just one tiny little thing. Another one of our clients she's such a riot. She was telling us this, everything she says is funny, but she was telling us the story that her ex got a dog and said that the dog was trained by a Russian and the dog only spoke Russian. So they got in this huge fight because he insisted that the whole family had to learn Russian because they had to train the dog in Russian. And she was like, she actually has like the recording, like someone in like one of her kids actually recorded this argument of them like he was telling her like the dog only speaks Russian. Like you have to learn Russian. It was like a serious argument. Like
that is freaking hilarious.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just wow. I'm so glad I have never had to go into all that craziness. But Jesus,
Yeah.
It's so great, though, that there are people out there now advocating because this does happen so much. And when you're going through it, it's not funny. And
no, it is not funny. And I definitely don't want to minimize it. I'm just like, yeah, we're fortunate enough to see people like move down the path and then later we laugh, but it is not funny. But it's so important to have support from people who get it. And we have in our support group, that's one of our client perks. We actually mix our male and female clients together, which is highly unusual in domestic violence space. But we say our clients tend to be like the biggest sweetie pies, both male and female. They are like the shining stars that made their exes look good. And a lot of them are really well educated. But it's great to have people that really, really understand you, because in a normal support group, a normal divorce support group, people will be like, that cannot be true. Right. And so people will share the stories. Like we have our babies who are at the very beginning of the process. And then we have our grizzled veterans who have been in it for a while. And so it's really good. The babies get a little scared sometimes, but the grizzled veterans are so calm because they've been doing well. And they also are just like, yep, I'm here. I'm still doing my thing. And you just kind of get used to it and accept it. And then you keep living your life.
I think that's important because then you have someone at every step of the process. Because even on my show, like I talk about a lot of deep, disturbing things. But with my guests, we still can laugh about it because you've done the work. You've moved past it. Now it's like, what in the hell? You know what I mean?
I know. Like, so, how can I believe this?
Once you can get to that point, it's a whole new world. But it's just, you got to get there. And it's a process.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it really helps to have people with you where you can just say, like, you know exactly how it feels.
Right. And be like, help, what do I do in this kind of situation? And someone who might have walked that same one will be like, well, this is what I did. Or it's good to have people who, they understand. They can meet you where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if anyone was like going through this right now as we speak, like what would be your advice to them?
Well, first of all, realize that it is not just you and your crazy ex. It's the whole system, unfortunately, and that it is really important. I know so many people dealing with this have been the ones carrying the burden of everything, probably felt like single parents even while they had a partner. It's one of the loneliest things to be in a toxic relationship. It's far worse than being alone, I think. So realize that even though you're so independent and brilliant and taking care of everybody else, like now is the time to ask for help because you need support getting through this. And the most important thing you can do is to get support to learn how to become self-regulated so that you can help your children moving forward. Because the better you are, like the more balanced you are, and if you're able to still enjoy your life in between all the chaos, you're going to not have your children feel like they're responsible for your emotional health. And that's something a lot of people don't think about because they're so busy trying to take care of things and their kids worry about them because they see how much they're struggling. So for you to realize like, I'm going to get help, I'm going to take care of myself. Your kids will be like, my mom or my dad is good and I can just live my life and still be a child. So that's really, really important. Find people. Well, actually, let me back up for a second. No doom scrolling. So people in this situation tend to be very attracted to the accounts that have these horrible stories about, children getting killed and family court stuff like going wrong. And now is not the time to be reading about that because that influences how you approach your situation. That's going to make you feel like you're never going to win. You're going to fail. Family court is corrupt and biased. And if you don't have tons of money and you're a woman, like you're going to lose. That's absolutely not true. Many people, we only deal with, like I said, high conflict cases. Most of our clients do extraordinarily well in court. And these are the hardest cases. And so it's really learning what you need to know to get through it on many levels, like strategy and emotional support. So understanding that you should not be looking at that stuff now. You should be looking at like the accounts that have like the puppies and the cats and things that make you laugh because you have so much cortisol, that stress hormone. You need to have it balanced out with pleasure hormones. You really have to be conscious of like, that's harming your brain right now. Don't look at that stuff for now. That's for later. Sociological experiments, people who are not in this are like, wow, that actually happens to people. That's fine, but not you for now. That's for later. So that's my advice. There's all kinds of other things in terms of strategies, but first, like really, really take care of yourself and ask for help.
I think that's important. Self-care. You can't help anyone else if you can't take care of yourself. So
yeah.
And I love it that you help people pretty much worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I love that. I'll make sure I'm going to put your links in my show notes. And was there anything else that you wanted to add before we close?
I think a lot of people beat themselves up because they feel like, how could I have been so stupid? I know a lot of our clients are very successful in other areas of their lives. They're looked at as role models. And so they feel even more ashamed because their friends and family are like, oh, I never thought you of all people would fall for someone like that. Or like, why didn't you just leave sooner? Or why doesn't the judge just do this? Or, oh, you're still in court. Like, try to understand that people just don't really they don't understand what domestic violence is, but it affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men. And just because it feels like it's you and you feel like such a, like a loser or like stupid or whatever, nobody's talking about it. It's not that it doesn't occur. It's that nobody's talking about it. And you're going to get better. And the person that you were involved with, the reason they were attracted to you is because you're such an amazing person. All of our clients, like I said, sweetie pies, successful, responsible, creative, beautiful. The reason that they chose you was not because you were foolish. It's because you're a shining star that made them look good. And so it says something amazing about you, not that you should feel bad about yourself. So just try to remember that. And that once you get through this, and you will with support, you need support. Otherwise, you're not going to get through it. You're just going to soar. So invest in getting that support and realize that life is so much better on the other side. And it's going to be a bumpy road for a while, but you're going to look back and be like, I changed for the better. And like one of our clients said, if this hadn't happened to me, I would have stayed a doormat for the rest of my life. So there's many amazing opportunities ahead for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Once you get past all of it, it's like a whole new world. So
it's not even at the end, like as you start going through it and getting better, it's a whole new world. It's not just one thing at the end. It's like a process.
Right. I can imagine you grow as a person as you go through your process.
Yeah, you really do.
Well, that's great information. I really appreciate everything that you said today. And I think this will help people. And again, like I said, I'll make sure I have your links in the bottom of the show notes so people will be able to come and find you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. Yeah, it was a pleasure.